December 7th of 1941, a date which will live in infamy. And while it will always carry on in history with these tragic memories, there are some bright spots of heroism and courage that must also be remembered. So in this special edition of Heroes of the Skies, we will go through 7 of these heroes and follow their stories from that day, ordering them from the fewest to the most Japanese planes shot down. The first 2 airmen that we will go through did not even see victory in the air, but will certainly showcase just how dangerous getting a plane off the ground truly was. So first, let's look at the fate of 2 pilots by the name of Lieutenant George Whitman and Lieutenant Samuel Bishop. George Whitman was a U.S. Army Air Force pilot and officer stationed at the harbor on December 7th. He was popular and well liked by nearly all of the men at his base. On this fateful morning, Whitman awoke from his bed and looked out the window to see the attack underway. He immediately jumped into his car and sped down the road to get to Bellows Airfield, which had not yet been hit. During this drive, his car was strafed by Japanese fighters repeatedly, but he courageously carried on. In a later interview after receiving his car, his sister would note that it had so many bullet holes throughout it that she was amazed that he even survived the drive. A few minutes later, Whitman arrived at Bellows, where he jumped from his car and immediately sprinted to a P-40. It was still in the process of being armed, but he said that he would take it as is and jumped into the cockpit. He started the engine and taxied onto the runway. With the engine still cold, he pushed the throttle forward and started to take off. Unfortunately, at that moment, 2 or 3 Japanese Zeros saw him moving down the runway and turned to engage. They opened up and strafed his plane. Whitman, as he was trained, attempted to use the rudder and turn once his wheels were in the air to try and shake the fighters. But this tactic would be useless and ineffective because the Zero was incredibly agile, and the US intelligence had ignored all of the warnings about this new fighter. So American pilots were truthfully not armed with the proper strategies to take them on. In a few seconds, Whitman's P-40 took multiple hits and caught fire. It crashed near the beach by Bellows Airfield shortly after takeoff. When Whitman's plane went down, he was so loved by his fellow servicemen that many of them immediately sprinted from the airfield to his plane to try and tend to him, regardless of their own safety. Tragically, upon reaching his aircraft, Whitman was at almost the exact same time at Bellows, another P-40 pilot by the name of First Lieutenant Samuel W. Bishop attempted to take off as well.